run farther and faster. Is that really possible? Now, most of us usually have a preference for whether we like to run far or whether we like to run fast. In training anyways. But when it comes to race day, we all want to be able to cover that distance as quickly as possible. And when we talk about distance running, we know that we're talking about needing a very high level of aerobic capacity. Now sure, different distances require different training parameters to be able to perform well at each of them. But when it comes right down to it, we know that distance running, it's an endurance event. So we need to break down our training to resemble what kind of energy systems we're using whenever we're racing. Now you may have heard of a few different styles of training, such as 80-20 running, MAF training, zone 2 low heart rate training, or others. But 80-20 training is really just this. It means 80% of the time you're running in an aerobic heart rate zone, and 20% of the time you're running at faster paces. Now when you get into training, it might break down just slightly differently than that, but in general you're looking at somewhere around that 80-20 split. Now on this channel we talk a lot about MAF training and the MAF method in general. But many of you know that I'm not necessarily married 100% to the MAF method in its entirety. I think the MAF method by itself leaves a lot on the table and really leaves a lot to be desired in a bunch of different areas. Number one, of course, being, where's the speed? So that's why I always have used MAF training as just the 80% portion of the 80-20 running principle. But here's the truth. If you don't put in that aerobic work, then you're not going to be able to go the distance. And a lot of people who don't adhere to low heart rate training tend to overtrain and do way more than 20% of speed or tempo or higher intensity activity. Now, why is this a problem? When you exert yourself to this extent over this much of your percentage of training, you really put yourself at a pretty significant risk of injury. Now, this injury could be physical or it could be more along the lines of some sort of mental burnout. I know that over the years, I've suffered with both of these things. And for me, adding some sort of variety to the training plan always helps lead me to not have this burnout and not have as many physical injuries. So how do you implement this? Well, in theory, it's pretty simple. Keep track of the amount of distance you're actually running on a given week. 80% of that should be dedicated to running in a low heart rate zone to build your aerobic capacity. And the other 20% should be at a higher intensity, helping you build speed, strength, and quickness on the ground. Now you can watch all kinds of videos that'll tell you the benefits of building a higher aerobic capacity. But just as a quick overview, you're going to build a much more efficient heart muscle that pumps a larger amount of blood with every single beat. You're going to build capillary density in the extremities of your body, allowing you to exchange oxygen much more efficiently between your blood and your working muscles. Now, of course, there are benefits to going harder and faster as well. When you're going at faster speeds, you're encouraging the nervous system to fire at a much faster rate. So when you train this in training, it will then carry over into a race where you'll be able to fire off much faster with every single step. But if you work the speed without the endurance, you're going to end up doing this and then bonking way before the finish line. And since most distance running events require about 80% of our energy to come from our aerobic system, it's going to benefit you to lean heavily in the direction of building that aerobic base. Now tell me this, are you keeping track of the amount of aerobic training that you're doing versus the amount of speed training that you're doing? Do you even know the difference? Now, when you're truly training the aerobic system, you're going to be able to run and still be able to maintain a conversation at the pace that you're running. Now the problem is a lot of people think that their easy run days are actually very easy when in fact they're pushing themselves way too hard. People should be relying more on those speed work days or specific tempo run days in order to build their specific paces that they want to be able to race at. Easy runs are supposed to be just that, easy. You should be able to run a really easy run one day and then the next day hammer a really hard workout and feel totally fresh during that workout. Now I know this was me in high school, but every single time it was easy day, it was still a hard day for me. I would try and run those 8 miles as fast as I possibly could. Now I've learned how important it is to really take it easy, not just for the fact that I'm going to burn myself out, but also for the fact that I'm going to help prevent injuries. Now I mentioned earlier that different events require different amounts of aerobic capacity versus speed work. So of course, if you're training for a mile versus a marathon, you're probably going to have a slightly different distribution between aerobic running and speed work. But in general, even if you're running the mile, you might still be running about 80% of your miles at an aerobic capacity, but you're just going to be going a lot faster when you're doing your speed work. And then when it comes to marathon running, you might actually spend 95% of your time in an aerobic zone versus 5% doing speed, just to make sure that you still keep that turnover going. So tell me this, do you guys split your running into 80-20 kind of a principle? Or are you just heading out the door, busting a gut every single run, and not really paying attention to the way that you recover? Leave me a comment down below telling me what you guys think about that. And of course, if you have any other questions, please leave me a comment down below. I'll be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Head on out there, seek your elite. God bless, and I will see you next time.